Hello, and welcome to the virtual Marquette Food Co-op cooking classroom. My name is Sarah Monty, and I'm the Outreach Director here at the Co-op, and today we're going to make a light and refreshing white bean salad. So I love beans as a main course because they're a cheap protein. You don't have to have meat with every meal, but you'll still feel really full when you integrate beans. I also love the salad because it's April, it's snowing out right now, but soon enough, the warm weather will be here, and this is an awesome dish as a side to maybe a cookout that you're having, or even as a light lunch on its own. So let's get started here and talk about what ingredients are going into this. So first of all, I have some great northern beans. I cooked these from dry. If you're in a hurry, you absolutely can make this with canned beans. You just want to make sure to drain out the water, rinse them off really well, and then get them in your bowl. But it's really economical to make the beans from dry, and I think it also tastes a little bit better. I cooked these pretty long, but when you're cooking from dry, you can get them that perfect texture because you do want to have each bean be somewhat solid for this. It's a salad, not a paste, not refried beans, so you can control that when you're cooking your beans. One of the secrets to cooking dried beans is make sure to salt or season your water. It's just like pasta. If you've heard the adage that you want to salt the pasta water because the pasta will absorb the salt as it cooks, the same thing goes for things like potatoes and beans. I'll even go a step farther. And when I'm going to cook my beans, I'll actually saute a little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion in my pan. Maybe I'll use a little leftover bacon fat or just regular oil if I don't have that handy, and saute those aromatics and then add my beans to cook them. In this case, we're not making a Mexican style or a Spanish style bean where you really want to have that oomph. We're making a very light, refreshing one. So in this case, I just boiled the beans with some bay leaf and some salt. If you don't have the bay leaf, you can totally skip it, but make sure you salt that water when you cook your beans. Once I've drained them and put them in the bowl, we're going to take a look here at the other things that we've done. While the beans were cooking, I actually started working on my onion right away. So you'll see here that I have my slivers of red onion in a bowl with a little bit of water and a pinch of salt. Why in the world would I do this? There is a reason. So onions tend to pick up the flavors of the soil they grow in. And depending on the amount of sulfur that's in the soil, it can really make a difference as to how that onion tastes, i.e. how strong it is. And what's more, a lot of the onions that we're purchasing, especially this time of year, are storage onions, where those sulfurous compounds are going to be stronger than ever. So I really want to have my onion be raw for this recipe, but I also don't want to make it unpleasant to eat. So what you can do is thinly slice your onion and soak it in cold water with that pinch of salt, and that will draw out some of those sulfurous compounds and make the onion milder for you. Now, you could skip this and do something like a shallot, which tends to be milder, but shallots are more expensive and red or yellow onions tend to be more common. So I used a red onion in this case simply for the color. It just looks pretty in the dish to add that color. But if you have a white onion or a yellow onion, simply do the same technique and use that. How the heck did I cut this? Well, you may have seen this on a previous video, but we're going to leave the root end of the onion on and just slice off this edge. Once you've got that sliced, you have a nice flat edge that you can put your onion on so it's not rolling around. Always make a round object flat as soon as possible. Then I can take my knife and cut right through the root down the middle, which also makes the onion a lot easier to peel. Peeling a whole onion can feel really tedious. In this case, it just comes right off. Now that I have that cut, I can make very thin slices. Because this is raw onion, we don't necessarily want to have a huge chunk of onion in every bite. We want this to be as mild as possible while retaining the benefits of the raw onion. So I'm going to make sure my fingers are out of the way. Don't cut an onion flat fingered. You're gonna take off the tip of your finger. So I'm gonna dig right in. If you have nails, you can use them, and just go slow. And you're gonna cut as thin as you possibly can. So you can leave it thinly sliced. This is what we call a half moon cut. Or you can actually cut it into smaller pieces if you want. So you could cut it in half, or you could cut it in thirds, or even you can make a nice little stack of them to cut them all at once. If you really want tiny pieces, you can cut them into fourths. That said, if you cut them too small, it's going to be hard to drain them out of the water. So I tend to do only the half moon cut with a single slice through it. Just cut that half moon in half, get it into the water, and be sure to give yourself about 20 minutes. So if you only soak it for 5, you're not going to get the same benefit. So let me get this aside. And I'm just going to drain my onion because this has been in here for a while. Obviously, you can drain it out into the sink. And the onion might get a little bit softer. You're gonna notice that the color of the water, it might have a little bit of discoloration. That's a good thing. You're getting rid of the stuff that's gonna make it unpleasant. I'm just gonna add that to my bowl with the white beans. Now the other vegetable we're going to use in this is some celery. So celery is one of those staple things that we have in our kitchen. And it's really good in a salad. I really love this though because I found this celery that has all the lovely leaves. The leaves are completely edible. Don't throw these out. In fact, they're really flavorful and they're gonna add value. When I'm buying celery, I'll actually look for stuff that has a lot of leaves because I want to use them in my salads. So you're gonna do a couple of things here. So we have our stalk of celery. I'm gonna take off this root here. Put that aside. You could make vegetable stock with this or chicken stock if you have some chicken bones around. This stuff is also important to have. But you're going to set it aside for now. We're not going to put it in the salad. And then depending on what size you want your celery pieces to be, you can just start cutting crossways, or you can cut down the middle like that. And then you can cut it as thick or as thin as you want. Once you have this celery chopped up, you can also cut up some of those lovely leaves for this. So this white bean salad that we're making is actually inspired by a traditional Italian recipe for white bean salad. And they'll use these celery leaves in all kinds of salads. I've even seen it where they make risotto, which is the cooked rice dish that's so cheesy and kind of we think of it as heavy duty. Well, their lighter, summery risotto in Venice often includes the fresh celery leaves in it, both cooked in and as a garnish. So because I figured you didn't want to see me chop up all that celery, I have it pre-chopped right here, and I'll go ahead and add it to the bowl. So this is the basis of this. From here on out, it's pretty optional. If you don't have celery, you could absolutely do some kind of other vegetable. You could cut up some fresh spinach or something like that to put in there. You could do fresh cucumber if you wanted, but I really love the combination of the celery and the red onion, not just for the color, but just that they taste really good together. One of the key components of this dish that really takes it up to something more fantastic is fresh herbs. Now, a lot of times people tell me they don't know what to do with fresh herbs. They'll have it for a recipe and they only needed a few tablespoons, and now what do? Put it in everything. And you can use any fresh herbs in this salad. Parsley is very traditional, but I've used parsley, I've used dill, I've used basil. You could do cilantro. Anything that you have left over from some bunch of fresh herbs that you bought can go in here. So I have here some Italian style parsley. That's just the variety name. And you'll see that there are pretty big stems on here. I'm not going to take those off. The stems are usable too. So I'm just going to bunch these up, these leaves and stems, and I'm going to make really small cuts because even though I want to use the stems, I also don't want too big of a piece of the stem. The stem has a ton of flavor, a ton of nutrients, and it's perfectly edible. So don't get rid of that stem. Use it in a salad like this. You can use curly leaf parsley if you prefer. I just figured it's an Italian recipe. Let's use an Italian varietal of parsley. I have also done combinations of herbs. So you could do like dill, basil, and parsley mixed together in this. But the point is, I think of it less. It might be called white bean salad, but sometimes I think it should be called an herb salad with white beans with the amount of herbs that I put in here. Herbs are flavor. Herbs are nutrients. There's even an author who's done a bunch of research on which of our foods are healthiest for us. And what they found is that fresh herbs, the cultivated fresh herbs that we're buying at the grocery store, are the closest to what the original wild plant had for nutrients. Sometimes in plant breeding, we lose a few of those nutrients as we pursue the plant's ability to store well or to be super duper sweet. So a Granny Smith apple might not be as sweet, but it has more nutrients than, say, a Pink Lady or a Honeycrisp. So using things like green onion, fresh parsley, all of that is going to max out your nutrients in your food and add tons of flavor so you don't have to add as much sugar or salt to your food. That said, we're obviously going to add a little bit of salt to this. So I'm going to set this aside. We have our parsley in there. The dressing is super simple. You don't even have to mix it ahead of time. All I do to dress this salad is take a little bit of olive oil and drizzle it all over. This is the time to invest in a little bit of olive oil. In some of my other recipes, if you've watched these videos, you'll hear me say, don't bother to use olive oil. Just use a cheaper oil that you can cook with. In this case, the olive oil is part of the flavor, so you're going to want to use olive oil and not substitute there. I'm also going to do a splash of white wine vinegar. This is totally optional. I like a lot of acid in my salads. I like to have a little bit of punch. I really enjoy kind of rich foods. I haven't met a dairy dish I don't like, but if I'm going to eat those rich foods, I like to have a high acid salad with it because it provides balance and it brightens your palate so you're ready for that next bite of whatever cream-soaked thing you're eating. So I'm putting a little bit of white wine vinegar, and you could do all a vinegar if you want. But if you have fresh lemon around, if you have that option, fresh lemon is very traditional in this dish. So if you can find one of these juicers, I find them all the time at thrift stores. It makes it really easy to max out all the juice that you can. It's a great job for the kids to help with. Whenever I have a salad dressing that needs like 4 or 5 limes, my kid just gets to work with the juicer. She loves it. But if you don't have that, you can simply squeeze the lemon over the salad. You don't have to have that equipment. So I'm going to put that lemon there. I'm going to pour out some of this lemon that I squeezed ahead. If you want to use bottled lemon, that's fine too. I don't think it tastes as good as the fresh, but sometimes if we're in a pinch, it's what we've got to do. So I'm adding a little bit of salt. And then I'm going to stir this up till it's well mixed. Now, you might ask, well, why can't I cook the onion before I add this? I've alluded to the fact that there's a really great nutritive benefit to not cooking it. So while onion is nutritious, whether it's raw or cooked, a lot of the immune boosting properties that we associate with onion and garlic, it actually is not as impactful if we cook it. So to get those immune boosting properties, you're going to want to try to incorporate some fresh garlic and some fresh onion when you have the opportunity to, either by adding a little fresh garlic to a salad dressing or by adding some raw onion to your salads like this. So I have here this lovely salad, and I think it could even have more herbs, but it's up to the individual. This is the kind of thing where I always keep tasting spoons around before I serve it, because You have to taste it to know, do I need to add more lemon? Do I need to add more olive oil? Does it need more salt? It's up to you to decide, and if it doesn't taste good, it just means you need to add more of something till it does taste good. Well, I think it's perfect, and I wish you were all here to share it, but I hope that you'll give it a try and have this at your upcoming summer picnic.